Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to Step Back Tonight for today, May 25th, 2021. I'm your host, Tristan, and oh boy. Sorry if there's, for people in the YouTube chat, there's been a little bit of a disconnection. I had to close and restart, so I don't know if anybody's even watching the new one, but yeah. YouTube doesn't have much respect for when you disconnect and reconnect, so it has to start a whole new stream ID. It's really infuriating, but I think we're here. I think everybody's, who knows? There's 8 people here, so maybe it's going to be a bit of a slow stream tonight. Who knows? But hey, hello everybody. All right, let me open up my document. Here we are. Oh. Hey everybody, I'm Tristan, the host of Step Back and Tristan Won't Shut Up. I stream on Mondays and Tuesdays, Mondays from 12 till 2 Eastern with Mia Mulder, and on Tuesday nights from 7 to 9. It's just you and me with Step Back Tonight. That's me, this person that you're looking at now. I go by he, him pronouns. You can find my work at stepbackhistory.com or tristanwon'tshutup.com. If you want to check out, I have a streaming channel. This is a thing I need to draw attention to. So for anybody who is a fan of the streams, let me just dig this up for you. Wow. I really should have prepared. I'm going to put the link in my little opening spiel document right now as soon as I get the link. But I have started a Step Back Streams channel so that you can catch up with clips from previous streams, so that will be in the whole thing. Do you need to read a pre-prepared to get your name right? It's not so much that I need a pre-prepared to get my name right. It's just that I don't have the URL, so I was getting the URL. So Step Back Clips, it's a channel that I made. Yeah, there should be some new content on it with the stuff that I've done from this stream and last stream coming up in next week. So there's been a time off because I didn't stream last week. So that's what it is. Yeah, if you want to support whatever it is, this thing that I do, you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory, or you can go, or if you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free Twitch Prime subscription every month. You can use that to support Step Back in whatever way. You have whatever way, like what's it called? You get 1 free per month. If you don't use it, Amazon basically gets to keep your money. So use it on an independent Twitch creator. If you use it on me, I'll be very grateful. Let's see. As for stuff to look forward to or stuff that's going on, I have a video that came out just a little over a week ago on loneliness and capitalism. Probably one of my better videos. I think that people seem to really like it. So if you want to check it out, it'd be super awesome. My next video, I'm hoping, let's see. I'm hoping to, I shot it today. So I did do that. So I already filmed it. And I basically have 2 days to edit it for the sponsor deadline. So that means that Thursday that patrons should be seeing it, or if I'm late, it's going to be Friday. But yeah, so that's going to be a thing that comes up soon. And what else should I mention? Yeah, so and for everybody else, it'll come out either on Saturday or Monday. I think of the 2 options of what you'll end up seeing. Okay. Now I'm going to put a link to the Google form. So that's a Google form. That will be a place for submitting questions for future streams. So that's a thing. Let's see. There's something else I needed to look for. All right. I think that's everything. I think that's all. Oh, yeah. If you're brand new, if this is your first time watching a stream, first of all, sorry. This isn't like representative. I'm very distracted today. I basically have used all of my brain glucose recording my video today. So this isn't like the best condition I've been in to start a stream, because I basically came to the stream after right after eating dinner, and before that I was filming for hours. So I'm like, my throat is used up, my brain is out of energy, and I'm just like, oh no. And now I'm gonna try and chill my way through a couple hours with you guys. So I better not get worked up, you know. All right. Woo. Luckily, though, I have some tea that'll get me through tonight. I got this tea from England. It's imported British tea. It's not even like a special tea. Like, it's not like fancy tea or anything like that. It's just a brand of tea that is only available in England and isn't available here in Canada. So I had it, I ordered it, and it had to come all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to get to me. Oh, it smells good, though. It's literally like a huge tea brand. It's malted tea. It's Yorkshire tea, but it has this flavor in it. So it has this sort of malt added to it to make it so that it tastes a little bit like you've had biscuits in it already. So it's sort of like sweet. It's pretty cool. Yes, I love that Yorkshire tea. I'm going to go exploit video games now. All right. Hey, new to your content. Really, really liking it. Awesome, Malcolm. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Let's see. I almost never get to catch these streams because I'm in the UK. This is awesome. I'm excited. That's great. Awesome. Much appreciated. J Lord, thank you for the $5 Aussie dollars. Why is Trudeau hated by the left and right in Canada? Ooh, that's a good way to start the show. Trudeau's hated by the left and right in Canada for different reasons. The right so you have to know one thing. Canadian conservatives typically hate the earth in general, and anything to expedite its complete destruction is the only thing that will make them happy. Trudeau has stated that he believes climate change is real and is doing a tiny amount of stuff to try and maybe have a little bit of movement towards possibly thinking about doing something about climate change. And the Canadian Conservatives, who are essentially an extension of the oil industry, are absolutely not having it. And so they think that Trudeau is a communist who wants to put in the New World Order, who wants to, do all the bad things because he isn't aiding the Alberta oil industry hardcore enough. Like, it's not even that he's not helping the industry, because he literally used federal money to buy an oil pipeline, but it's that he's not actively encouraging the destruction of the planet at the fastest possible speed that you can go with. So that's why the right hates Trudeau. The left hates Trudeau because to build that pipeline that he bought, has greenlit basically trouncing through sovereign indigenous territory. He ran on an election of doing massive electoral reform, and then the second he got elected, abandoned it, and has done this long string of right-wing neoliberal bullshit on top of just general corruption. He more or less shoved the first woman who was Attorney General of the country, or first Indigenous woman Attorney General of the country, basically drove her out of the Liberal Party and out of cabinet because he asked her to cover up corruption, corporate corruption. There's this Quebecois engineering firm that was that had economic sanctions put on it by the United Nations for making deals with Gaddafi's government in Libya. And the Canadian government wanted to not prosecute this company for doing illegal trades with a dictatorship because he wanted to make sure he didn't lose votes in Quebec. And when his Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, refused to do crimes for him, he basically just shit talked her in the media and kicked her out. And 2 other cabinet members went with her. There's some more fun stuff like the We Charity scandal, where he was essentially getting big speaking engagement payments to give very nice government contracts to this one charity that turned into a whole thing. And eventually they scapegoated the finance minister, so he's out. So that all that stuff, just being blatantly corrupt, very conservative, and not really doing anything to address issues of income inequality, trying to find what's it called? Bullshit market-based solutions for problems that are built out of the fact that capitalism is a waking nightmare of which we will never awaken. So, yeah. When will the Step Forward channel launch? I think I've pretty much nixed that idea. Most of my ideas about a futurist channel or futurist topic could be on Tristan Won't Shut Up. And also, Step Back is sort of changing its direction in a way to not be as explicitly a history education channel and more of a editorial channel written by somebody who's a historian. So between those two things existing, there's really I don't really need. First of all, I don't have the bandwidth to start another channel, but at the same time, I also don't think that I need to do another channel's worth. I think that whatever ideas I have can fit on one or the other. Does it taste like transphobia? Let me try. No, it doesn't taste like transphobia. Did I put milk in it? No, because I don't have any milk. Just have some Splenda. Speaking of Yorkshire tea, Vicky 3. Oh yeah, exciting times for Vicky 3. I'm pumped. That's gonna be a good game. If everything that I've read about it is true. I already have plans. I already have plans to make anarcho-communist Canada. I already have plans to, reverse Turkey's or reverse the Ottoman Empire's downward trajectory, become a major power, and possibly, just fucking with Europe in multiple ways. That's my ideas. Playing the United States and killing the Confederacy real good will also be really fun. All right. Do you think there's anything these UFO sightings by the Pentagon? I just read a Scientific America article that pointed out that we only think aliens when we see weird stuff in the sky because of sci-fi tropes. So, that's a good question. So, whenever we talk about UFO stuff, I gotta fight my own very strong motivated reasoning that really wants the UFO stuff to be real. So I know that I have to be extra skeptical because I know that the part of my brain that secretes hopium into my system will want me to believe everything. Some people have pointed out to me some stuff about how the Pentagon always seems to release their UFO stuff when when the federal government's under fire or is doing something controversial. So it's sort of a way to distract people while they push through shitty legislation, like for this time it's the massive arms deal with Israel. But what else? I do think that maybe there's something to be said about how the sci-fi trope thing. The only thing that I think I would want to add to that conversation is I do wonder if the sort of UFO thing that we're going to get is more going to be about the fact that, like, we live in a world where you can buy for $40 a quadcopter at Walmart. So, like, would it be super weird if governments were starting to experiment with spy drones that were, like, really sophisticated, and that governments have programs to try and find out their capabilities and intercept them and stuff? Like, if would these, like, impossibly fast things be like sophisticated Chinese spy drones or something like that? I don't know. It's hard to believe in UFOs in the age of quadcopters, is all I gotta say. When I was 15, I was a global warming denier. I asked my geography teacher about it. How should a teacher handle that kind of thing? He told me I was talking shit, which pushed me even harder. So there's a teaching, like, when people say they're climate change deniers, talking through why they believe such a thing, and finding out what their motivation is probably the way to go. With a lot of kids, it's just that they were told by an adult in their life that climate change isn't real and they just buy it. So I would probably use that as a teaching opportunity to talk about evaluating evidence and like looking at, like, how to tell a good source from a bad source, that kind of a thing. And talking about how, industries have motivations. Like, it would be super convenient for capitalists to be like, oh, this thing that's a result of our economy being based on infinite growth isn't real, despite, like, all the scientific consensus. And then maybe even talking about things like merchants of doubt, like how they did something similar to this with the link between cancer and smoking, or smoking and cancer, I guess I should say. And, like, so it's like not the first time. Some malty tea, everybody. All right. Buffering YT? Oh, no. Keep facilitating between, well, what else could it be? And if there was an alien civilization close enough to Earth to be visiting us so frequently, there'd be more evidence of it. Yeah. Obviously, okay, like, if it is alien contact, not saying it is, but if it is, the chances are pretty low. But it does mean that, like, they have some sort of interest in not making contact with us. It's obvious that they're trying to observe us without us being able to communicate with them. So that will make things difficult. But yeah, I kind of facilitate between, like, there's a million explanations for this. Like, all of this stuff has reasonable explanations. And I wonder if we're going to get a lot of hype for a report that's going to say, I don't know, we don't know what this was. And people are going to fill in, I don't know, with aliens. But then, the other parts of me are just like, well, we don't have a solution to the Fermi paradox yet. And man, if the solution to the Fermi paradox is that aliens do exist and they're here, and they've just gone to measures to make sure that we don't interact with them, and that the UFO people were right all along, like, part of me is like, that would be pretty cool if that was a thing. So, but that's obviously not where, that's like, to think of it in a Bayesian fashion, that is a fairly unlikely outcome right now. But it's one of those things where, like, I'm pretty sure that that UFOs are not aliens, and also I would be so happy to be wrong about that, is the thing. So there we go. That's good tea. Yorkshire tea, malty biscuit flavor. Yum, yum, yum. Ugh. I got a, what's it called? Like, I'm doing the proper, like, look at this. I got a whole kettle here, or a whole teapot. And I need it because not only am I thirsty, because I've been very sweaty, it's very hot here today, and I was recording a video where I couldn't have the fan on, and the air conditioner hadn't cucked in, and so I was very warm in my office. Flavored tea, how American! This is literally Yorkshire tea. I got it today in the mail. It literally came all the way from the United Kingdom. Queen Elizabeth II herself blessed this tea kissed it before it left across the ocean to go to the colonies. So, I believe aliens are digital entities. Interesting. I mean, maybe we're a simulation and it's them fucking with us. Because a lot of this stuff is stuff that doesn't follow the laws of physics properly. So maybe we're in a simulation and they're just like, well, like, what if we made things that went faster than the speed of sound and had no boom? How would society react to that? And it's like, oh, okay. Would it be cool? We have no idea what their intentions would be. Fair. But, like, be a better news story than some of the shit that we see now. I would hope that any alien species that can travel faster than light, theoretically, to get to this fucking planet, have, are more have a more sophisticated and enlightened philosophy than what any of the fucking weird shit that we get up to. It's the Prince of Wales, not the Queen. Well, that's why the tea is malty. Posadism much, maybe. Well, I must hope that there's somebody intelligent in space because there's bugger down here on Earth or something like that, right? Is that a song people know anymore? That's the redheaded stepchild of the Monty Python movies. The Meaning of Life, where it's like this whole song about like, just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 800 miles an hour. Such a good song. If anyone hasn't heard it. Cool mug, thank you. Yeah, I've got two of them. Luckily, I have ADHD, so I have both of them here. So these are mugs that I got from an Enamel Works company in. I live in London, Ontario, and there is this small group of people who find Mexican folk art and bring it to or import it to Canada and sell it. And last summer, there was this brief moment in Ontario where our COVID cases were like under 100 infections a day. And so things were like reasonably reopened for a while. And so they were selling these pieces of art at this brewery that I was hanging out at with my friends. We were kind of doing like, patio beers. And I went there 2 weeks in a row. And these two are... so what they are is that this was from... Okay. Let me try to hammer this all through. There's this in Mexico. Grasshopper Imports. No, this was made by this is actually like a couple that live in London, and it's a very small business. I think they only operate in London, but so in Mexico, there's a tradition which on Dia de los Muertos, these they'd make like comics like little drawings of people as skeletons, people in your family and stuff like that. And these two come from a 19th century Mexican, what's it called? Mexican political cartoon. And this lady here specifically is sort of like the mascot of Dia de los Muertos. And it's become like a pretty big, like you'll see her in a lot of things in Mexican art. I'm sure what her name is. Like, let me find this. Catrina? Oh, yeah. La Calavera Catrina. Yeah. So this is often used as a drawing to depict her. And this is sort of this piece of 19th century political cartoonage was sort of the inspiration for, well, she's based off of the Aztec goddess, but like this sort of portrayal of her as an upper class 19th century Mexican woman comes from this political cartoon. And now it shows up in everything. And this is her husband from the same cartoon. So when I went to buy this enamel mug, because I love this style of mug, and I love Mexican art. And so when I saw these, I'm like, oh, I gotta get these two. These are so good. I would have bought more. But these were the two, like, a lot of them were just like pictures of animals. There's one that had kind of like a Kraken Cthulhu tentacle-y type thing, and I might have gotten that one. But then we went in lockdown, so I couldn't go back and get more of them. But yeah, I really liked it. All right, J-Lord, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on the anti-woke left? Don't like it. I've been sitting on, so one of the things I do is I usually think of 3 video ideas for my next video, and I get my patrons who are $5 patrons and higher are able to vote on what my next video topic is. And I've been wanting to make a video on Strasserism and beefsteak Nazis and the anti-woke left and Vampire Castle and like sort of anti-IDPol left people, and like just sort of talk about this whole thing about like and like Jimmy Dore and stuff, and like talking about this like attempt to try and build a left-wing movement that is okay with like being okay with racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, etc., and like trying to make allies with the far right and stuff. And it's like, it's not it, bruh. And I'll be so I want to collect my thoughts so I can make a full video on this topic, because it's a thing that really bugs me. What do you think of the Israel Prime Minister comments on Palestine and the Holocaust? I haven't seen it. What's the Vampire Castle? Vampire Castle is an essay from 2012 that's basically the beginning of like complaining about cancel culture. So it's this essay, and I read it a little while back. The thesis of it basically is that we can't build a left-wing movement if we're going to be shaming people for not being socially progressive enough, and we don't have like a way back from saying and doing shitty things to like the mainstream left, and that you have to like build a tent and be accepting of like people who have shitty opinions. And it's the essay that, you know, every single like your Amy Therese's, your Amber Frosts, your Peter Coffins and them have all read. And like, it seems, I don't know, it just seems like this cursed essay that when you read it, it turns you into an asshole. Because it basically is the beginning. It's like the essay that is like the seed of the like anti-cancel culture left people who are like, who call people woke scolds unironically and shit. And it's like, oh God. Does currency have no real value if you can't pay tax in it? Yeah, I mean, no. That's from Debt the First 5,000 Years, right? That currency usually shows up, hard currency shows up in areas, usually when a state is building a large military because they want to find a way to pay soldiers, but also find ways to have that money returned to the government because they don't want to just give away all of their saved up silver and gold. So they set up this whole thing where they make money and then they make taxes so you can get you can kind of pay people to then put their money back into your pocket. And in so making your state the center of economic activity so that your government becomes in control, basically. The one where he said the leader of the Palestinians gave Hitler the idea of the Holocaust. I mean, I don't know about the link there, but I do know that the idea for the Holocaust was inspired by not... the main inspiration for the Holocaust was not Palestine, or it was not a Palestinian. It was the American system, like how the Americans. Hitler was directly inspired by how the Americans committed a genocide on their Native American population, and how they kept black people as a permanent subjugated class. That was the inspiration for the Holocaust. That is the main one anyway. So, yeah. Also, I don't know if that excuses ethnic cleansing campaigns on the indigenous people of Palestine. No one's made the argument that because of the Holocaust that we should just erase Germans from the face of the planet. I guess that was kind of Stalin's plan, but there is a whole thing about how a podcast that I was just on about fascism came out, and I was a guest on this podcast, and thing I pointed out is the whole world has blame to share for the rise of fascism and the genocide that came through it, and so maybe we shouldn't try to say any one person is responsible for Hitler and the rise of the Nazis and stuff like that, and the reason why they were able to get so powerful that they were able to commit horrible crimes against humanity. But maybe the whole world has to blame for letting that happen and thinking we can cut deals. Western powers decided to do nothing as Hitler rose to power and expanded. German conservatives thought they could make a deal in order to bring back the Prussian Empire. Stalin thought that he could cut a deal with the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. So, everyone thought that, you could do anything with fascism except violently stomp it out with all due force. And you really can't. Your video on Israel, there were Palestinians who allied themselves with Hitler in the 20s. That there were, they're very much an extremist group. And they were more about I'm trying to remember the name of this group now, and I don't want to mischaracterize them, but they were more about, taking a side, they were more focused on getting the British out of Palestine. That was their main intent. And so they opposed whoever was opposing Britain. And because Britain was at war with Germany, they tried to make cause with Germany in order to push the British out of Palestine. Yeah, that's the main thing. I think they're called the Irgun or something like that. Wow. I can't believe I was able to successfully dig that one out of my head. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, the Irgun. Yeah. Where are Jews indigenous to? They are from, they're indigenous to all sorts of places. The thing is that Jewish people are a diaspora group. And so for the last several thousand years, they have been moving all across Europe and across Ethiopia and really all over the world. And so maybe like the main issue is that we don't have, like, the idea of nation states is kind of bullshit. And we should probably get away from this idea that we're supposed to live in designated nation states where everybody is homogeneously one type of people everywhere you go. So at this point, Jews come in all sorts of ethnicities and all sorts of histories now. And if you're a person who was born and raised in Israel, like, I'm not going to say that you're going to be deported or anything like that. That's not a thing that should happen anymore. It's, we're several generations in at this point. But, maybe just stop pushing people off of their land, like, currently is the thing. Podcast link. I can't give you the podcast link. It's, I can, but, it's for my friend's podcast. And I was, my interview was like a bonus episode. So apparently you have to be a patron to see it or to hear it. Sorry. The Tories are trying to introduce voter ID laws. You know how reducing airport security seems unimaginable. Even if Labor gets back in power, one day will getting rid of these laws be seen as untenable because once a security measure is in place, you can't imagine removing it. I don't know. We've seen these kinds of things get removed before. A lot of barriers to voting were removed from the Civil Rights Act. So it's not impossible. Because a lot of people will know that things like voter ID laws don't really fall under security. Voter ID laws, I think people are pretty well aware that voter ID laws are just voter suppression. It's just trying to get poor people and people of color to not vote so that only white people get to decide who's in power. Everybody knows it. Nobody admits it. Or, the conservatives won't admit it, but that's exactly what they want. So didn't Germany have influence from Martin Luther because... Okay. Thank you for another super chat. J-Lord, there are variations of the anti-woke left. Some are open to the far right, which is bad, but others just want their films and games the way they want them. Yeah, so they're anti-woke left. They're left-wing, but they don't want any SJWs putting women's in their video games. And in which case, then you're just dealing with people who are just being reactionaries, who just want their, I don't know, fuck off, is my answer to that. It's like, other people can like things too. And if it gets you so, like angry that there are now just women in your video games or whatever, maybe the problem's not with the people who are making the changes to have media reflect the people who consume it, but maybe it's you. Maybe you're the problem. I don't know. All right. Wasn't that generally something that happened sometimes? Anti-colonial fringe groups allied themselves to the Axis because they were oppressed by the powers of the Axis were fighting. I don't know, actually. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure it happened in some cases, yeah, but... Do you think cancel culture can be a thing or it never exists? I'm not saying it never exists. It's just that there's a different there's several, like, the thing is that cancel culture has just become another one of the right's dog whistle words, which might have represented something a while ago, but now has basically lost all meaning, and is now essentially people who seem to be offended by the idea that they can be criticized on Twitter. Like, that seems to be what cancel culture is now. Is just like, if I'm ever criticized on Twitter, therefore it is a cancel culture. But like, people getting dogpiled, and like the muddying of like legitimate criticism alongside genuine harassment that comes in just huge numbers, to the point where it's like seriously emotionally damaging. There's something to that, but that's like, to call that cancel culture is not. It's just not a valid term anymore, because now cancel culture has been co-opted into a right-wing snarl word to essentially mean whenever anybody criticizes any of their shitty opinions ever. And usually comes from people who really don't respond well to criticism, or they're just like rich and famous and are completely unaccustomed to people criticizing a position they take. And it's very hard to conjure sympathy for those people. But the people who've experienced genuine harassment, like when somebody says something that was, kind of shitty, kind of like, wasn't fully considered or something like that, or even something that was misconstrued, and then having it sort of like explosive, exponentially blow out of control, and all of the like legitimate criticism of the thing they did being then tied in with people who just get their rocks off on like being angry and just harassing and doxing and all that kind of bullshit. That is a legitimate thing that needs to be addressed, and I don't exactly know how to address it, is the thing. Here's how much the tea you imported would cost at a supermarket 3 miles from my house. Okay. £5. Oh boy. It's like, I think that's like $10 here. So shit. Lots of tannins. I'm feeling tannin-y. Somebody asked me a question about my RPG world and politics. Here we go. How much do your politics affect your RPG world and adventures? And I wanted to answer that one. Fair, a little bit. I mean, probably like my worldview obviously like informs everything that I bring to the table. But like, yeah, my like the current D&D campaign that I've been running for 3 years, and it's sort of coming to an end soonish. Has been about anti-colonialism. Has been about like they dealt with an apartheid type situation where they basically destroyed an apartheid state. They like everybody who is in power is bad. Other things is just like in the setting, as an anarchist, like I don't see states and governments as like the default thing. So I have it so that like different fantasy races have different concepts of government and organization that's not just strictly like kingdoms or republics or whatever. And I actually have it so that like kingdoms and republics and stuff is like a very human thing to do. While like, this is like nobody cares about this. So I'm just going to talk about this really fast. But like halflings sort of live a stateless communal lifestyle, typically protected by a different empire. Dwarves sort of have like a whole intricate ideology based on productivity and resource exploitation. So essentially, who is in charge is the person who discovered the resource that they're manipulating. They only see value through skilled labor. So they all share in duties like mining and cleaning and like, things like that. But then they actually do pay money for like artisan skilled crafts and stuff like that. And elves are reclusive. mostly. If you see elves, it's because they're young. Because there's this thing called the thing that elves go through called autumn, called their autumn, which is because elves typically go out into the world when they're about 100 years old. That's when they reach adulthood. They then will meet mortals, or not mortals, like they'll meet like people from the short-lived races that only live like 70, 80, maybe even 200 or 300 years, and they'll live among them for a while. And then when you go through your autumn, is essentially when you make a bunch of friends, and then you have to watch them all get older and die when you don't age at all. And that happening once or twice typically pushes them to go back to be amongst their own people who understand that kind of thing, because that sort of like generations of losing friends and stuff like that has sort of a psychological impact. Because I thought that was the thing that was interesting. So yeah, that I'm just gonna move away from that at that, because I realize that nobody gives a shit about this. I literally made a joke about how you guys hate it when I talk about D&D in my most recent video. So, where I got Lumiru to voice it. It was pretty fun. What's your idea on Gandhi's nationalism and how we can have nationalism without becoming fascist? I don't know. Like, there was a strength in the anti-colonial nationalist movements trying to build nations out of colonized people, taking, what wasn't a state before and trying to build one in order to build an identity to oppose colonial oppression. That seems like it had a lot of very useful, and it was very important at the time. But I'm just, long term, there doesn't seem to be that much value in saying, this is the land where only one kind of people are, and no one else is allowed to live here, and we're going to make sure that everybody here is of a pure, of this type of person stock. Because that's not how humans live, generally. We're always been like a highly interwoven, cosmopolitan, mixed bag of people from all over the place, living in like pockets around each other. And the nation state's sort of an unnatural attachment to that. Would you say that Jews have been de-indigenized from Israel, Palestine, and that Zionism attempt to re-indigenize the Jews who are there at the expense of the Palestinians? It's a bit more complex than that, obviously, but also, like, the Jewish diaspora is big, and it's been around for a while, and also to say that a religion has claim over territory and stuff like that. Like, the thing is, Palestinians and Jews have a biological like root connection. Like, there weren't Muslims. Islam didn't exist when the Jews were pushed out of Israel, and so a lot of like the Palestinians today are like from the same group of people. Like, they were probably predominantly Jewish back at that time when they were kicked out. So, like, it's just because they converted to Islam and because their language moved from Hebrew to Arabic doesn't mean that like they all of a sudden don't belong in the country that they and their family have lived in for thousands of years. Like, at that, like, you're eventually like if you're making, like, when you're going this deep in history, you're gonna start weird claims like, well, then obviously Italian people should just start showing up in England and start setting up colonies because the UK is traditionally Roman, and so the Romans should just be, because the Romans, around the time that of the Jewish diaspora, the Romans were in charge of Britain, so let's just have the British, like the Romans should just start rightful claim. All right. All right, the last thing. All right. All right. The last thing they want you to do is stand up and call them out when they are wrong. That is what cancel culture has become. It's the Swiss Army knife for anything they get questioned on. Yeah. I signed a petition to get the government to hold a debate about voter ID in Parliament. Not because I think it will stop them, but because I want them to say, yeah, we have no evidence that this is needed, but they're going to do it anyway. Does that have value? I think it would. Like, you definitely need to, like, control the framing of this as it's a voter suppression law. It's not a voter security law. And also, like, I just suspect that mass voter fraud in the UK is not an issue. I feel like that would have made the news if it was. I'm open to diversity in video games. However, I don't like the way Lara Croft and Tifa Lockhart were changed. It's just harmless fun. Okay, so you're just mad that you lost your mommy milkers. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you lost your triple D delights in video games. You might want to consider that, like, you know, women don't, like, super love being defined by their just massive mommy milkers. And maybe that they wanted to rewrite these characters as, you know, more complex and well fleshed out characters instead of just a giant pair of breasts attached to some controller buttons. So, yeah, they decided to move away from, like, the cartoonishly large boobs for some video game characters. I don't see what the problem is. And if you want that, just go play that Resident Evil game everybody's losing their shit about. So, like, there you go. You got. If you really want to be horny at the pixels on the TV, go play the Resident Evil game, and you can have the big vampire lady step on you, and you'll get everything you want. Although you're in Australia, where video games are like $1,000 or whatever, so. What about people making stuff to cancel someone, or what about something that someone did in the past and is now changed, but now it's picked up to hurt that person? Yeah, there's that is stuff that can happen. Definitely does happen. Okay. But then again, also, I would say that I have issues with, like, some people who really make a big deal about cancel culture, who are like, I changed on my views. I held those views 10 minutes ago. I've never apologized for them. I've never even said that I disagree with these things anymore. And I'm still friends with tons of people who regularly dehumanize and hate people who are vulnerable. But now I'm good, so you can't criticize me anymore. And then the thing is about people who do shitty things is that you don't just say sorry and you get forgiven for everything you've ever done. Like, sometimes really, like, you know, growing up and facing the bad things you've done is acknowledging the fact that there are some bridges you don't repair. Like, you can't just, I don't understand how people can't get this through their fucking skulls. Sometimes, when you've hurt somebody, even if you apologize, even if you genuinely have changed and you feel bad, sometimes you just fucking hurt somebody and there's no real coming back from it. And that person you apologize to is under no obligation to accept your forgiveness, to get over whatever it is you did to them. Like, that's not a requirement. That's not, and to think that it is a cruel obligation you're putting on the person that you've already been shitty to. Like, you just kind of have to accept that for some people's narratives, you're the villain because you did a genuinely shitty thing, and you have to acknowledge that and live with that for the rest of your life. That's part of learning to accept the bad things you've done in the past. So sometimes if you've had a multi-100,000 subscriber YouTube channel where you complained about women on the internet for years and years and years, and then you instantly say, I've changed my opinions, now nobody can say bad things about me, about anything I've ever done, and not acknowledge that, hey, there's lots of people where your years of shitting on them have made them not want to be associated with you anymore. And if that bothers you, get over it. Because, yeah, some shit you don't walk back from. Anarcho-syndicalist dwarves for me. All right. You stole that from the Amish? Did I? So elves are Amish. They're not Amish. Elves are it's sort of like most. So like if you were an elf in my sort of campaign setting, when you're a child, basically when you're under 100, everybody in your society will tell you that you should just stay. If you go out into the world, you're just going to get yourself hurt. You're just going to have bad things happen to you. And you're going to come back anyway. So, you might as well just stay. But no elf who spent 100 years living in the same culture, or very few of them actually stick with that. And they always leave. To the point where it's just considered almost a rite of passage to just kind of wander off for a bit and then they come back. But it's not like the Rumspringa or anything like that, if that's what you're trying to refer to. It's not like they have a ritual where you go out for this 1 year and come back. It's it's just sort of like a thing that happens because they live so goddamn long and they don't really age, that is just sort of the psychological effect of that disparity in age, and they eventually come back. Sometimes, and there's exceptions, sometimes they don't come back. There are elves that have kind of worked through the issues that happen there, and they've been the center of many multi-generational families and stuff like that. But there's just sort of a term they have called the autumn, which is just when you realize that nobody who's not going to live to be 700 years old is going to really get you. And what you're going through. So that's, yeah. Yeah, think you'll outlive the entire party. Yeah, one of the things about D&D, the first thing that came to mind that I really wanted to play with the real ramifications of is the fact that the different races all have different life expectancies. And I really wanted to really sit through the ramifications of what's it like to be a race that lives to 700 when most other races don't live past 1 to 300 years old. You would be for example, in D&D, elves live to be 700, but half elves, which are half humans, only live to be about maybe 150. So that means that to elves, many times if they have children with humans, they know that they're going to outlive their own children. They know that they're going to not only outlive their own children, but they're going to be at a point where their children look like they're older than they are. And that you're going to live for centuries after both your spouse or whoever you have kids with and after your kids are all dead. How does that affect you? How does a person psychologically adapt to that and really grok that culturally in their heads? And so a lot of half elves have very detached fathers or very detached elven parents, because their elven parents don't want to get too attached to their kids because they know that it's going to be really traumatic to outlive their children, that kind of stuff. it's very dark stuff, but like it came from me being that being one of the first like weird things about fantasy that I wanted to like think about. Why can nationality just be the country you live in and ethnicity being? I don't know why nationality can be just the country you live in, and ethnicity being that, and not them being tied. I don't exactly know what you're going for, but the idea of nations is sort of a 19th century construct that has sort of outlived any usefulness it might have had for anti-imperialism purposes, I think. I feel like no one mentions that at no point in history were the Jews the only people living in Palestine. Well, there's that too. Some people are talking about the Olympics. I don't have any problem with the Olympics. It's not for me, but I'm not going to take it away from people. I think it's, as someone said, it's just a bunch of like the best athletes in the world trying their best at different things. I think that's cool. I have a friend. Well, I don't know if she's a friend anymore. I haven't talked to her in years and years and years now, but she is an Olympic athlete, and I think she was at the Brazil Olympics for Team Canada for rowing. And so that's the one time I ever watched the Olympics, was to watch her event in the Olympics. Yeah. I have this idea for alt history where in the 20th century we discover a portal to an alternate Earth and it's still in the Iron Age. Go to Earth, force them to abandon primitive economies in favor of neoliberalism. Have we made things better or worse? Oh boy. I don't know. Probably, I mean, like, not dying of disease and not being constantly sick with like food poisoning and parasites would probably make life quite a bit better. So there's that, but they would feel like I feel like it wouldn't be like strictly like, is this better or worse? They would definitely feel like their day-to-day material existence would be greatly improved beyond their wildest comprehension. They would feel like everybody lives like the most decadent kings of their society, and even then greater than that. But also they would have much less control over their time, and everything would be much more regimented and controlled day to day than they would be used to. So they'd be a lot more comfortable, but a lot less free, which would probably, depending upon people, would matter more or less depending upon, what they value in life, I guess. You said that in your D&D games that that everyone in power is bad. Well, what if you were writing a game set in northern Westeros while Eddard Stark was in the north? Would you make Ned bad? Ned was bad. Ned executed people with summary justice. There was no trial or anything like that. He executed a person for running away from the wall because everybody around him died. He was so stuck in the mud about traditions that it ended up killing him and putting his kingdom into chaos. Everybody, okay, not everybody in power is bad, but the people who want power are bad, and power tends to make people bad. There's not really a lot of like kings or emperors or anything like that who are considered like good people. There's like one, and she's also 13. So I don't think that it's a bit of a different situation because she's kind of in like a quasi-regency because she's 13, but she's also very smart and very motivated. So But she and also was raised by her grandfather, who was like a mega intellectual and like all this stuff, lots of weird stuff. But she she's probably like, I can't think of anybody else in power who is like genuinely good. And who knows what happens when she grows up. But mostly because like she spends her whole interest is in like urban renewal and like infrastructure construction and stuff like that. So she's yeah. The backlog of sexist video games is so huge that no one can actually play all of them. Oh boy. Can anarchism work with a nomadic society? I would argue that there were very few nomadic societies that weren't anarchist until it's more like the main issue is actually, can anarchism work with a sedentary society, which is a stronger argument. I feel like there are ways to discuss that in that work, but it's still like, my father would apologize for being the oh, geez. Historical fact. Okay, let's see. Yeah. I'm stupidly proud of derailing the discussion where Tristan specifically tried to stay away from. Makes troll. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm gonna like, when I edit this stream to make a clip, I'm definitely gonna have to do like a Dungeons and Dragons video out of it, and I'm gonna have to cut from the different places where I talk about this D&D setting. I try to, because the thing is like, also, I feel like a lot of people, when they design their Dungeons and Dragons campaign settings, put a lot of work into like the history and politics of their society, and I've done a lot more work on trying to understand the culture and material conditions of different places. Like, I have, like, the history of my campaign setting is extraordinarily vague. There was a thing that happened in the past that that led to basically a calamity. That's basically like most of it I know. I've hinted at a few things about how they were technologically advanced and it went away. But for the most part, like, I do more when I'm like doing world building. I'm thinking more about like, okay, like, where do these people live? How would they get their food? How would they, like, what kind of things would they be into? And what their culture would be like and that kind of a thing. And my stories tend to come out of that. This is probably why a lot of my stories take place in like cities instead of like in the middle of nowhere. But like, yeah, so that's like more or less like it probably makes me different from other DMs anyway. But I feel like that's the more interesting story. I like thinking more about like, how would orcs live day to day and what kind of impact would that have on others, and how cultural misunderstandings can lead to conflict, and how, different ideologies clash and things like that. That stuff to me is more interesting than like, oh, here is this empire that 400 years ago did a thing where they went to war against the people of the South. And it's like, okay, first of all, I don't care about that very much. And I'm pretty sure that players who are playing in your D&D setting don't give a shit about that kind of history. And I find that they would be more interesting or more interested in becoming invested in like characters and like towns and stuff like that, in which case the culture helps a lot more. Okay. So you can be stupid. So Muad Mouse, you can be proud that you derailed the conversation twice. Suppose you're an 18-year-old who has sex with a 14-year-old and should happen out of that. What else shitty things have done? Kind of uncomfortable by how many people seem to be thinking that GOP politicians should be locked up for having sex with a kid when he was a kid. Yeah, I mean, it's a context-dependent situation. There are Romeo and Juliet laws for specifically that kind of thing. Because when you're saying 18 or 14, it's like, oh, like that sounds super fucked up. And it is if it's the right kind of situation. It could also be a high school senior and freshman. And if you think about it in that context, it's still a little weird, but it's not like the weirdest thing I've ever heard. But I think it's more that he drove his wife to... He married her and then drove his wife to suicide and then, like, is estranged from his child. I don't know. It seems like there's a bit more going on there. But, yeah. Because, yeah, it would be, in a strict legal sense, that would be statutory rape, which is a crime. Though, a lot of states also have something called Romeo and Juliet laws, which is usually if, like, one person is above 18 and another person's under 18, but the age gap is less than, I think, like 5 years, something like that, then it's a little... there's some wiggle room there. But yeah. It's a context-dependent thing, I think. What's my thoughts on Bundism? I don't know what Bundism is. You could take from inspiration and his human mother. Yeah, well, like, the thing is, they don't talk much. Like, Orange Man, you're talking about Spock and, his wife, or Sarek's wife and Sarek. But, like, that is a good example because between the TOS era and the TNG era, Sarek just gets remarried to another human woman, and it's just, like, not even remarked upon about, like, what it was like for Sarek to outlive his wife. But even then, Vulcans only live like 200 years. 700 years, you're talking about, like, people who live to, like, the age of countries. Like, can you imagine somebody today who was alive in the fucking 1300s? Like, just impossible to imagine what it would be like to live that long, you know? Is Jesse Gender here? Nice. I'm so behind on my scrolling of the chat. If you're still here, I don't know if you've left. I don't know how long it's been since you were last typing, but I really liked your Ezri Dax video. Just wanted to say it was pretty good. As somebody who has always been a really big fan of Ezri Dax, it was a very good revisiting of her storyline. Let's see. People were literally killed to build the Olympic Stadium in Brazil. Yeah, that was definitely fucked up. Yeah, the Olympics does have a lot of bad things that are happening. Who's the 13-year-old girl in Power you referred to? She's an NPC in my D&D setting. Her name is Abba Hanuman. She's sort of like the leader of a city-state. And she's empowered because the city used to be run by powerful families, sort of like an Italian trade republic. But then the party basically overthrew the entire order and turned it into a more sort of semi-democratic, centralized thing. And then Shankar, her grandfather, because like what happened was they met Shankar, who was sort of like their point man in the city, and he was Abba's grandfather. and they talked with him, but then they went to the Feywild and jumped 4 years in the future. When they came back, he had died of old age, and she was in charge. And when they had met her earlier, she was only like a 9-year-old, and then came back and she was about 13. And so she's sort of like this, she's just like, precocious youngster who also happens to be like a kind of competent young leader. Still a bit too young for a position, but she's kind of like in a regency type situation. But yeah, she's just an NPC I had in one of my games. What are my thoughts on orcs and half orcs? In my setting, orcs are the negative stuff that's said about orcs mostly has to do with the fact that they're nomads, and people who are sedentary often have bad things to say about orcs that are nomads, or about nomads. So a lot of like the habits of life in, on the frontier and in nomadic societies is sort of stuff with them. Like about how orcs drink a lot of yogurt, and they have a lot of like pack animals, and they do like raids and stuff like that, but like they're a bit more complex, and they also can be hired as security and stuff. So like I tried to be like, they're kind of like Mongols, but like, or steppe nomads, but they're like a bit more like detailed than just like they ride on horses and kill people, because like, they're not like Dothraki. They're like their own thing with their own culture. And I'd like actually went and researched what what day-to-day life was like for them. And so that's basically that. Okay. Bet Tristan would be fun to D&D, play D&D with. That'd be great. I thank you. I don't get to play that much, actually. I am a perennial DM. I'm currently DMing 2 campaigns. What do you think about the concept of personality? Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? I have this idea for an alien society that has no concept of land ownership because they are reliant on crops that can't be grown in the same region. So they were nomadic until they invented high-speed travel. Does that make sense? It could. Romeo and Juliet laws are for when high schoolers are dating and one of them turns 18 but the other doesn't. Yeah. If that's the issue. Must be betweenness of 4 years and the parents have to be okay with it. Okay. So there's caveats, obviously. How about an openly leftist RPG stream? I'm trying to keep my Dungeons and Dragons stuff as sort of like a thing I do for creative fulfillment and for social fulfillment. So I've tried to not turn it into a side hustle. I've considered it many, many times, but I do try to spend energy to keep it mainly a thing that I do for fun with my friends, and as a source of like creative output. What I would consider doing is maybe doing like a charity one-shot or something. That might be a thing that I would put together. Get a bunch of my famous YouTuber friends to do a one-shot to raise money for a charity or something. That's something I'll sit on for a moment. How long do you think people would choose to live was entirely up to them? This comes up in the culture series, and Banks decided that 400 years is about how long? I actually don't know. I bet it would be different for different people. There are people who have committed suicide because they think that they actually... There's not many of these people. I only know of one case of a woman who was an author, but like they committed suicide not because they were like in like some deep depression or something, but because they feel like they accomplished basically everything they wanted to do in life, and they were just like, all right, it's my time to go. But there are other people who like constantly would be wanting to reinvent themselves. I imagine that if you had a choice, if you could choose how long you lived, you would get very different answers about what that would be. And I have a feeling that a lot of people would just choose not to die for a long time because, like, I always think about, like, man, if I could, like, live another life, and it's like, you could live another life, you know? You could, if you just got tired of doing one thing for a while, you're like, all right, I'm going to, like, one of the things is, like, you know, if I had another life, I would probably have gone to university for computer science and become a software engineer. If I could live forever, at some point when I got tired of doing history, I could just go do that. The idea that people... Oh, hey, thank you for the super chat. I'm a social democrat, though I often agree with you, and I agree with Lenin's observation that Australia had zero potential for revolution, basically because our capitalists are so rich and the population's so small. That's, like, fair. Probably say you would probably want to check out, like... If you're curious about, like, where my political philosophy kind of stems from, try reading, like, The Conquest of Bread, or maybe, like, Debt the First 5,000 Years, or Bullshit Jobs. Those are, like, probably, like, some of the most influential books that have, like, shaped the way that I, like, see the world. And if you wanted some good books, it's good ways to get started. Why did you make that question about accomplishments? I said bored. I mean, I didn't want to make it about accomplishments. I wanted to make it about... But there was one case of a French author who committed suicide because her reasoning was that she had accomplished everything that she wanted to accomplish and she didn't need to do anything anymore. So she offed herself. That is an actual story of what happened. So, like, that was her motivation. For me, you know, I would love to just constantly, like, wander around and explore. I would love to see... I would love to juice life for everything that it's worth, so... If humans live to 400 but still age like I do now. I think there's a Junji Ito comic about that. I think there's also a Greek myth about that, isn't there? A 24-hour charity RPG camp stream would be definitely make it not a help make it not a campaign. It's true. I have a feeling like this is untapped potential. If there's a charity, maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do it for 100K or something like that. You know, 100,000 subscribers. I will probably hit sometime in 2021 or the end of 2020, depending on who you ask. And so if we get to that situation, maybe I'll consider a charity stream. But I don't know. I always feel like I'm still, like, too small potatoes to really do something like that and have it carry weight. But I do know enough YouTubers who are a lot more famous than I am, and I imagine that, like, if you were to get, like, some, like, big breadtube YouTubers to all come together for a D&D one-shot to play for charity, that would bring out numbers to raise money for a good cause. I'm not a Maoist I'm not a Maoist third worldist, but boy, do I agree with the notion that the Western working class has no revolutionary potential. Oh yeah, probably one of the more true things Mao ever said. When did she live? That seems like a very capitalist thinking. I think she died in the 70s. I don't remember. I only remember hearing this story in a it was either in the Philosophy Tube video about suicide, which is kind of an older one now, or it was a euthanasia documentary I watched. It was something like that. Only if you make them play characters based on their YouTube persona. Everybody would just be bards. Jose playing a what's it called? Aarakocra would be pretty funny. Aarakocra are the bird people in D&D, so yeah. A blue jay man, that'd be pretty fun. Sam is a demon. Ooh. Do you remember her name? I don't. No. I probably shouldn't have brought it up because it was just like a thing I heard in a documentary a few years ago that I've like only half remembered. But yeah. Whose podcast did you appear on? It was a Canadian media podcast called God damn it. I remembered it like not that long. I used to have it memorized, but now I just, it's completely, my brain is blanking right now. Big Shiny Takes is the name of the podcast that I was just recently on. One of the hosts is a friend of mine I went to grad school with. So now he writes for Jacobin. And so he wanted to get me on his podcast. Yeah, the episode is called, the episode's literally called Tristan versus Tristan because I was responding to an article by a Canadian editorial writer named Tristan Harris or something like that. And so it was about World War II in the Soviet Union. It's pretty fun. Is it hosted by Tarzan Dan? No. It's Marino, Eric, and Jeremy are the names of the hosts. And Jeremy and I went to. He did a master's in American. I did 2 master's degrees, one in history and one in American cultural studies. And Jeremy and I went to grad school together for the one in for the American Studies MA. You're running a Finnish D&D campaign that mostly the party talking about their feelings went from a 5-session mini campaign to 27 sessions. Damn. Yeah, that's good stuff. What's it called? I'm currently running a campaign that started as just like a few. It's like, okay, my wife has a bunch of friends who've never played D&D before, and it was quarantine, so maybe we should try and like get them to try it out and see how it goes. And now we are over a year into this campaign, and now people's like lives. I mean, most of them are Canadian. Only one of them is American, but like people are getting back into doing stuff in small ways, and yet it's still going. So we'll see how long it lasts, but yeah, it always happens, doesn't it? Oh no, was it the one that blamed the USSR for World War II from a couple weeks back? Yeah, it was that article. That was exactly the article that they brought me onto the podcast to respond to. Did I tell you I created a speculative evolution project about a planet where only mammals are feral terrier dogs? Nope. Definitely think, though, because I have my closest content creation friends for D&D are both of my closest content creation friends are D&D players, that if I were to do a charity stream, I'd have to get both of them on. So that would be fun. It'd be so like if I were to do a D&D charity stream, I know at least I would need to get Mia and Scott would be at least 2 of the players. Get that nerd sync and Mia Mulder energy going. I'm sure that would already start being fun. Should it be illegal for people who aren't at least social democrats to hold public office? Oh boy. I think it should be illegal to hold public office. Like, I think what we should do. This is my new political idea that would solve a lot of our problems. Is make being a politician a crime, or make trying to become a politician a crime. So if somebody tries to run for office, you arrest them and put them in jail because they are people who should not be trusted with power. So there you go. Problem solved. Do you happen to find that article in the St. Louis Commune interesting that I sent you on May Day? Understandable if you haven't been able to check it out. You're extremely... I know you're busy. Yeah, I don't know if I saw it. Sorry. Sounds like an awesome gaming group. Yeah, getting Scott from NerdSync and Mia Mulder would be a very good start to a charity stream. One shot. Trying to think who would also be really fun to get on for that. Yeah, Matt I play D&D with every week, so I know he's pretty funny. So he what's it called? His favorite thing when playing D&D is basically goofing around and making everybody laugh. So that would be perfect for, that'd be perfect for a charity stream. Maybe if we just called politicians public servants. No, I can't do it. If you want to work for there is something inherently bad about wanting to be a person who has unilateral power over other people. That is if you don't have an explicit I don't know. I'm not saying that it's like generally a criminal behavior, but it's mad sus. People who want power we should be extremely suspicious of. Because, what kind of like sociopathic narcissist is going to actually want to do that? It was sent on Twitter. All right, I'll take a look after the stream's over. Have I seen the new Drizzt animation? No. I'm also not like super into Forgotten Realms stuff. Like I haven't read the Drizzt novels. I haven't read any D&D novels. Like I haven't read any of the Forgotten Realms novels. I haven't read any of the Dragonlance novels. I haven't read any of that stuff. I mostly read science fiction. I'm reading my first fantasy novel in like years and years and years right now, and I've only just started. I've got it right here on my desk in trade paperback. Because it's the first time I'm also reading a paperback book in a long time. The D&D novels are deeply uninteresting. Yeah. I used to think that was true of basically all like major media tie-in novels. Like I've never read any of like the Star Trek or Star Wars novels or anything like that because I was just like, why would I want to read that? And then I find out that everybody really liked them, and so I'm like, oh, maybe I should read these things? I don't know. Have I read the Culture series by Ian Banks? No, I haven't. I don't know if that's in some ways I've been told I should read it, and then in some ways I've been told that it's basically just like it's a novel series for people who really like Wikipedia articles. That's how it was described to me once. Like it's like, imagine if a person who wrote encyclopedia articles wrote novels, and I was like, interesting. Because that sounds like something I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. But that's all on me. Like I also don't like a lot of alternate history fiction for the same reason, because they seem like they're written by people who want to write encyclopedia articles and they don't want to write stories. The Witcher books are very good. Yeah, I've read the first collection of short stories, and that one was very good. I was very happy with it. All right. Hey, thank you, J Lord, for another 20 Aussie dollar super chat. If you're planning a peasant revolt in northern Westeros shortly after Sansa Stark's birth, the people of the north love their young war hero lord and his beautiful wife. How do you turn them against them? I don't know. What's it called? I don't know, like, how you raise the peasants against the iron in an Iron Age situation. I don't know what the solution would be in such a situation. I don't know how you upset the monarchy in the Middle Ages. What are some of my favorite books? Now that's a complicated question. What kind of books are you talking about? You want like books of history, books of philosophy, books on like political stuff, fiction, RPG books? They're all sort of their own things. So it depends upon what kind of books you're looking for. Interesting. For the most part, I think if I was like to like try and upset the political balance in like Westeros or something, I'd be focusing on getting people fed. Like I feel like a lot of the thing they don't talk about a whole lot is that like in Westeros, like aren't like seasons like several years long, which means that the people who control like the big grain reserves are like the people who wield all the political power. So my guess would be trying to find a way to create a way to collect and distribute, like, you know, the grain during the winter in a way that's not controlled by the monarchy. That feels like the first place to go. My favorite D&D edition, probably 5th. I haven't really played. I've only played 4th and 5th. And 4th is, it has some charm, but it's very, like, you know, it's very much focused on being a tactical minis RPG, not really a like a, you know, RPG, like a role playing game, I guess. And I'm very much like a absolute like role playing, like I'm a role playing fiend. I am not really into character optimization. I'm not really into like the tactical miniature war games. I'm very much into the collaborative storytelling aspect of RPGs. So 5th edition scratches that it's the best, because like 4th was very gamey. It was very much like trying to be an RPG, like a World of Warcraft, but on tabletop. 3.5 just was too much crunch. It's too big. It has too many splat books, and also because of how big and how crunchy it was. There was just like this whole, like, there was so many options too. Like there was just like tons and tons and tons of options and customization that basically led to like a lot of really complex role-playing games, especially even on the computer, you find that people optimize things so hardcore that eventually a bunch of options become just traps. Like, no, don't take that, it's bad. And if you don't build your character properly, even if it goes against like kind of concept you're going for, then your character sucks. And I'm like, I'm alright with that. The seasons are of random length in Westeros? Okay. People optimize the fun out of games. Yes. I'm trying to actively resist that in my video game life now. I'm trying to actually try to not read guides on games before I play them and stuff like that. That's like a thing that I'm trying to get into. As far as like RPGs that or like D&D editions is like one thing, but like I find myself liking the Powered by the Apocalypse system games quite a bit. I really like Ironsworn. I've got some Ironsworn books over there, but like nobody wants to play anything except D&D, so you just kind of have to roll with what people want to play, you know? All right. Some people wanted some book recommendations. Any good labor history books? Ooh. People's History of the United States has some pretty good stuff on labor history, but nothing sticking out of like, because like a lot of stuff will be like, hey, thank you for the subscription.
OMG, Tristan. Feels like it has been so long since I've caught your stream. Step into his dab.
Nice. I haven't seen my dad dab in a while. That was fun. Moonpunk is PBTA, by the way. That's awesome. The indie RPG about radical union action on a lunar colony. That sounds fun. I also try to keep the RPGs that I'm into. I like RPGs that have a bit more scope than that. Like RPGs that are about like one specific scenario feel limiting to me. I like a lot of RPGs that are like more open-ended and fun stuff. I also like a lot of the solo RPGs like Mythic. Mythic's a pretty fun system. And also Fate Core. That's not a solo game, but it's a fun RPG that sort of looks at the whole thing from a different angle in a way that I'm interested in. So what are some fun books? All right, I'm just looking at my Goodreads 5-star rated books. The Darker Nations by Vijay Prashad. That's a pretty good one. It's a Cold War book. It's a Cold War textbook about the non-aligned countries and the decolonizing world in the context of the Cold War. That was a pretty good read. 1491, another one of my favorite books. My most popular video is called "The Truth About Native Americans Before Columbus Arrived," or before Europeans arrived. And it's a great book about like what life was like in the Americas pre-Columbian situations, and like it's built on like more modern archaeology, and it's like really, really cool stuff. So yeah, that was one I was really into. Let's see. A Brief History of Neoliberalism by David Harvey. That was a good book. Yeah. The Everworld series. I remember liking those when I was a teenager. Let's see. Oh, Coming of Age in Mississippi. That's another good one. It's what's it called? It's a memoir of somebody who worked Anne Moody, who grew up in the civil rights movement. That was a pretty good one. Have I tried Blades in the Dark? No, I've heard some interesting things about it, so I've been wanting to check it out, but just nobody wants to play anything but D&D, so it's what we play. Oh yeah, this Steven Johnson's Emergence: The Connected Lives of Ants, Brains, Cities, and Software. That's a pretty good one. You want a book that'll tickle your cerebral cortex. That's a really good one. The Song of Ice and Fire series, pretty solid, especially the first 3 books. Tourists of History: Memory, Kitsch, and Consumerism from Oklahoma City to Ground Zero. That's a book that I really like. But also is very niche to like the academic subject that I was studying in grad school. So if you're interested in the kitchification of mass death and disaster, then that would be a pretty good book. Mouse. Yeah, the 2-part Mouse comics. That's a pretty good one. Superman Red Sun. It's a pretty good graphic novel. Oh man. Okay, here I've got Rogue Nation: The America the Rest of the World Knows. It's a pretty old book at this point, and a lot of its statements are pretty blasé by today's situation. But I gotta tell you, Rogue Nation, when I read it in 2003 at the bright-eyed age of like 15, oh boy, did that book have a huge impact on my life. Rogue Nation was the book that basically made me into a leftist when I was 15 years old. So, and I never walked back. So, Kitchification of Mass Death and Destruction. Can you tell us about that? Sure. So, the author of the book was looking at how after 9/11 and after the Oklahoma City bombing, that the response to the death and destruction was met with this so capitalism, right, tries to turn everything into a commodity. And one of the things that they tried to do to make money off of like mass death, something that people are paying a lot of attention to, so people will pay money for it, was to was basically kitchification, which is like, for example, after Oklahoma City, one of the things that was like sold a whole lot was like Oklahoma City memorial teddy bears. And this happened during the AIDS crisis too, where they would sell teddy bears in order to raise money for AIDS causes. And it's like, it's the way to, in the wake of mass death and destruction, trying to make profit by sort of making these like really kitschy, lovey-dovey things to try and like make like this like super sentimental statement about something. The other one too is for 9/11 was all of the like firefighter memorabilia stuff that got sold. Like there was a lot of like firefighter. There was like I think the one thing that spurred her attention was that people were selling firefighter September 11th World Trade Center themed snow globes because it was like a thing to be like to do that. And so she was it's this like really deep interrogation of how as a culture we like infantilize, we use infantilized images to sort of convey an emotional idea of grief and loss, and that we can then use it to turn to sort of take the fact that you're making money off of a disaster and turn it into something that's like acceptable. Like how capitalism adapts to trying to sell things to people after like a period of mass death. That's essentially the book. Let's have a fun plan. Plan a peasant revolution 5 years after Robert's coronation. What are propaganda on Baratheons, Martells, Tyrell, Lannisters, Stark, Arryns, and Greyjoys? I mean, the Baratheons' closest thing to a peasant revolution was the fact that Robert was a drunken asshole, and Stannis Stannis burned his daughter alive, at least in the TV show. All that super fucked up. And also the fact that I feel like, was it Renfrey? Renfrey was the king who didn't suck, or the one who wanted to be king but didn't suck. The Martells were way too based to run propaganda against. They're perfect. Don't worry about it. The Martells were the Martells did nothing wrong. The Tyrells were the ones that like lived in the nice green fertile place and just gave everybody food, but they were also like sucking up to power, so they suck. The Lannisters, I mean, everybody hates the Lannisters. Starks, they're set in their ways. They cling to traditions that don't serve anybody anymore. The Arryns, don't even get me started. The Arryns are the ones that were run by like the wacky aunt that the wacky aunt who like executed people who looked at her the wrong way through the moon door, and had that like son who was just like a piece of shit. So yeah, done with that. Greyjoys were literally fucking Vikings that raided and pillaged and raped and reaved their way So they fucking suck. Renly only didn't suck because he didn't do anything and then died. Fair. Steel Weaver's rebellion that introduces communist revolutionary faction. That's pretty fun. Yeah, Blades in the Dark looks pretty fun. I like the idea. I'm interested in that idea of stress that they have. So like Blades in the Dark is it's an RPG where I think the main thing is heists. Like you're always breaking and entering and doing like big elaborate heists. But they have a mechanic where you can you have like a resource called stress, I think it's called, that you can burn to be like, okay, we need to get over this fence. Well, I bribed a guard to open a door for us. So I'm going to use my stress to say that was a thing I did last night. So that was a thing. Alrighty. Oh boy. Do Egyptian nationalists obsess over stuff like pharaohs and pyramids? Do nationalists in Islamic countries take pride in stuff that happened before conversation? I don't know about other countries. Egyptians definitely consider their like cultural heritage, and especially protecting it from like the Westerners who keep trying to steal it. And that's definitely a thing that shows up in Egyptian nationalism. So that is a thing. Can't really see a people's revolution in Westeros. Dragons mess up the power relations, and those have hard to come control. Yeah, you need to get yourself a dragon. That's the trick. Man, I was on the fence about buying a Greyjoy Kraken. What's it called? Poster back at like the peak of Game of Thrones popularity, and I'm glad I didn't because that show ended up sucking. And also, like near the end, obviously, the last season was just brutal. And also, my favorite character in the books did not get translated well to the show, which was Theon Greyjoy, and so I feel like Theon in the show, just they could not make him. They wanted him to like look good, so they could never bring him to like the absurd levels of degradation that the fuck was that kid's name? The fucking really fucked up guy that they put in charge of Winterfell when they take over. But Theon, like, there's a whole time in the book, which I know you couldn't do this in the show, but like, Theon spent, Ramsay Snow, that's it. Theon spent like most of, I think it was book 4, maybe book 3. There's a good chunk of one of the books where you didn't even know that he was Theon because they didn't even call him Theon anymore. They called him Reek. And like he had been so like utterly broken down as a human that there's a point, I think, when he gets called Theon and he doesn't even recognize the name anymore. He's like that far gone. And so, yeah, fucking like the story of like going from Reek to like, kind of the weird kind of position that he was in where he sort of has done some nice stuff to help Sansa in the end of the 5th book. I can't even remember. It's been now so long. Like, I think I read Dance of Dragons in like 2012. So like, I can't even remember where Theon is in the story anymore. But man, is it easier to resist an Imperial power if you're not close to the Imperial core? Oh, hell yeah. If you're close to the Imperial core, it's easier for the government to pretend they represent you. Yes. What you're literally referring to is something in in the study of imperialism is called the metropole and the periphery. So if you want something to Google to sort of understand it, look up the metropole and the periphery. Really useful for understanding the Soviet Union, and also pretty useful for understanding like how the American Revolution could work when they were so under equipped compared to Britain. Loads of times you regret the fact that there was never a Canadian version of Bernie or Corbyn. Given that your left-wing party isn't even the main opposition party, wouldn't someone like that be even less likely to get into power than either of them? Maybe. I don't know. I think that, honestly, our left-wing party is only not the official opposition because our left-wing party is afraid of left-wing ideas. And so they always, every time they come close to winning government, they fuck up. Because they'll instantly, like, what'll happen is, like, the polls will start looking like the NDP are winning. And then they'll be like, oh shit, we have to win. So they instantly, what's it called? They instantly backtrack on their ideas and start becoming more conservative and less like they start moving away and softening their best positions, and they end up losing. And like it happens. It's like clockwork. The NDP are like experts at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. All right, it is 9 o'clock. I think it is time for me to wind down. I've got a whole lot of D&D work I got to do before bed, so I basically have to prep all the encounters for tomorrow's session. So I've got work because I have to like make some monsters for it and stuff. Who should we raid? Guess we can raid left flank vets. Haven't raided them in a minute. So, everybody, it's been real. I'll be back on Monday. Please take care of yourselves and each other. And, yeah, be good.